Hi guys, my name is Ali and my group members are Sarah, Mahak, and Lucas. Our topic today will be about climate change and its impact on mental health. Before we jump into the interview, I would love to give an overview of the topic. So, as you guys know, climate change has a various impact on mental health, affecting individuals and communities in different ways. Some of the key psychological health impact associated with climate change, such as exposure to extreme weather events, such as like hurricanes, wildfires, floods, and heat waves. This can lead to trauma and stress. Individuals also may experience fear and anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of these events. Also, climate issue can result in the loss of jobs and homes, and dealing with these impacts can lead to depression and feeling of helplessness, especially in low-income countries. So, in order to dive in more into this topic, we'd love to interview our Dr. Luc Bernier. He's an expert in the Earth, environment, and society. So, welcome, Dr. Luc Bernier. How are you today?
Good, yourself?
I'm good, thank you. So, as you heard the overview of the topic, so could you elaborate more on the specific psychological responses the individual might experience when faced with climate impact of change?
Yeah, so you have very good examples here. Like, I think one thing we need to realize with the understanding of the psychological responses that people face with climate change is this is something relatively new in terms of the field of study. Uh, the realization that the projected impacts of climate change, and I'll read the ones that we observe.
Mhm.
And you listed earlier, like for example, like a lot of different forms of natural disasters, flooding, exposure to hurricanes,
Yep.
that they are triggering in people the same kind of responses that we see with other traumatic experiences, like for example, accidents, or for example, at war. I think probably there's a lot of commonalities in terms of people that are experiencing either that being in a country at war or knowing people who are facing those situations. So the one that is really new is eco-anxiety, like the fact that just knowing that climate change is happening is
Okay.
something that particularly in younger age groups we're starting to see being fairly widespread. Like there's a range of studies that have been published in the past, let's say 10 years, that are documenting various manifestations of anxiety in terms of changes to the environment that's happening, the loss of biodiversity, for example, and from those are linked also to climate change. There's depression, and the manifestations, the clinical manifestations vary. Like there's not one common manifestation. So like there's a whole range of different symptoms that are going to be accompanying this. The severity will vary greatly. There's some people that just the back of their mind they're going to be feeling anxious, whereas there are other people that are like they're literally paralyzed by fear of going outside.
Gotcha.
At the idea of that there may be a catastrophe looming on the horizon. Also, you indicated here depression. I think there's the feeling of
Situation, yeah.
yeah, helplessness, and
Yep.
the dread that there's nothing that can be done. And I think this is one of the other manifestations here that is linked to the impacts of climate change.
That was great. Wonderful. So how do these psychological reaction different like among demographics and like what factors contribute to the disproportionate burden on low-income communities and like individual with already pre-existing mental health condition? Is it like any difference between them?
Yeah, like there's some evidence that is showing that recent studies, and I think we've talked about this in one of the courses you're taking with me, Life Science 443.
Yeah.
There are recent study that has been done internationally that shows that, for example, women, seem to be more open to share their anxiety, feelings of depression in the face of climate change. Men internationally, it seems that they're trying to at least they present to interviewers a more optimistic outlook to climate change. So and there are different potential reasons for this. one that has been discussed is that men may tend to follow more like sort of traditional paternalistic roles, so that the role of the protectors in the face of climate change, so that like they would need to have more of an
I definitely agree. Yeah, I definitely agree with that because I also took a health science 2T03 2 years ago, and also we looked into like women's and men. Like, and we always found like more women like would share their feelings more often, but whereas like on the other hand, like men would like keep it to themselves. They would not like share because they want to seem like they be strong and stuff like that. But yeah, that's definitely true. Agree with that. So is there any intervention or strategy that have been implemented to address the mental health impact of climate change? And if so, is there like any successful initiative or program?
This is something that is in infancy, so we need to recognize definitely communication is key. Education to realize what are the range of manifestations that can happen in terms of the projections. Mm-hmm. What do they imply? Knowing exactly what is the nature of climate change, because like if somebody watches the what's communicated the media and look at events unfolding, like for example just recently Acapulco that in Mexico was hit by a hurricane. Category 5 hurricane was just leveled by the hurricane. It's easy to put this out of context and say like the world is going nowhere. But again, by having a good understanding of how the climate system works and the different features of what can happen, that can help. Definitely one thing that people need to realize, yes, the future doesn't look too great in terms of where we are in terms of reduction of greenhouse gases, but in fact, globally, we've made a lot of efforts already to reduce the potential for the most catastrophic events to happen in the future. So there's still be potential for catastrophes, but that's something that the worst has been averted. Education is key, but there's really there's no in terms of interventions. Like if you look here in Canada, like specific interventions targeted, for example, to younger age groups, because this is where we're seeing those issues being more manifest. There's really no plan that has been put in place by authorities. But definitely, like the other point you're making about the suggestion of at the community-based resilience program to like shore up the communities, protect them from the worst, so like prepare people. This is something that is probably a lot more effective. The countries where they are going in these directions, for example, the Netherlands, definitely people seem to have a more positive outlook or a more forceful outlook in terms of those issues. And again, it's probably like the point you were making in the other side. It's like the low-income communities which are most exposed. So this is probably something where the interventions are necessary. And when we go back to, for example, demographic concerns of gender responses, already one probably road of intervention is looking at issues of intersectionality. Like, for example, because what we're seeing is that in terms of people who are not defining themselves, like in terms of binary terms, they're already feeling a lot of anxiety. Because and this is something that is compounding further the feelings of anxiety, and there needs to be intervention there. And this is something that is poorly researched. There's not that much intervention. So this is something that at the community-based level, we need to be addressed as well.
Okay, great. And so based on your expertise, and as you mentioned, is there like, what do you think, is there like any steps you believe are crucial for building a more resilient, sustainable future for all, like for this generation, from the next generation that are coming?
Like, yeah, you have good points on your slide. Definitely, we need to move away from fossil fuels, like as much as possible. So having an infrastructure of renewable energy, solar, wind, and in coastal areas, like, for example, maybe exploring tide energy. There's room for reinvigorating like the nuclear energy sector. Geothermal energy is a possibility. Obviously, policies where making people a lot more aware and understand truly what then applies is something that is necessary. But I think there's even more bigger structural changes, both in terms of the economy, because we have an economic system. It's not for nothing that we're using fossil fuels, because it has supported the growth of the economy as we know it.
Yeah.
So we need to transform the economy as it is. Probably one that is going to be more focused on the care of people, the education of people, ensuring that they have everything they need. All the infrastructure will need to be revised in terms of healthcare, in terms of road system. Definitely, there's need to be a transition in terms of transit. Like, for example, a lot more public transit than we have now, cheaper, more of it. Also, more emphasis, for example, for short distances on of active transport, which we know is also good for people's health and it's good for the mental health specifically. That it's known. So it's really some, and again, creating partnerships also on the international level. Like if you look at right now, the geopolitics, the events that are happening, and this is a continuation of things that have been happening for decades at this point, there needs to be a greater collaborations between countries. And probably this is one of the factors that explains why there's such this widespread feeling of eco-anxiety, particularly where the studies have shown is like young adults in their 20s, which is like really prominent. Younger age group is not as pronounced. The fact that people seeing governments do their job and collaborate, this is something that would be quite important. So you can see like it's a transformative future that needs to happen.
I mean, this is like gonna take like a big step, especially there's like a lot of countries right now they're not contributing with each other, they're not working with each other. So that's definitely like a big step to take. But yeah, hopefully that's the future for the next generation.
Well, yeah, it's your generation. Like, unfortunately, I have to say it's probably going to be more of your generation that is going to be doing those changes because my personal perspective is my generation has dropped the ball big time on these. So, and this is why, like, when you the studies on these questions of anxiety, like mental health and climate change, you don't see that emerging as much as something that is leading to eco-depression or like eco-anxiety. There's some people that it is, but it's not something that is really as much of an issue in terms of mental health with people in their 50s and 60s. There are people that are concerned, but nowhere near as much as what we see with the younger age groups.
That's definitely true. I agree. But yeah, so to summarize everything in our discussion, we have uncovered the range of psychological responses evoked by climate change, from eco-anxiety to feeling of helplessness in the face of extreme weather events like rising temperature, hurricanes, and wildfires. Dr. Bernier emphasized how these reactions vary among demographics, especially impacting low-income communities and those with pre-existing mental health conditions. However, among these challenges, we have highlighted successful initiatives aiming to elevate these mental health impacts. Recognizing the crucial role of mental health professionals in providing support, more research is needed in order to tackle this issue and bring awareness to people, since it's a new topic. Also, Dr. Bernier highlighted the urgency of acknowledging the link between climate change and mental health, urging immediate action towards resilience. That was the wrap of our interview. Thank you so much, Dr. Bernier, for coming in today. I appreciate your time and effort for coming.
You're welcome. My pleasure.